Before I get into this, I just wanted to make sure that people knew that that the project that I'm working on is an action-adventure story, and it very definitely has imagery in it that would very much be PG-13 up to there. So if that might be objectionable for certain people's kids or whatever, there's certainly nothing vile in it, but, you know, it could be for certain people not what they would want to show their kids. I'm a designer, fine artist. I do comics. I've done film. And the project that I'm starting on, or have been doing, excuse me, I'm starting to talk about, pardon me, is called Holiday Mountain Madness. It's a graphic novel that's in progress, and it's about the titular character who's resurrected from the dead a year after he dies in 1887. So it's 1888. He rises from the dead from supernatural forces, and now he's this sort of death-dealing, witchcraft-using righter of wrongs and fighting against evil. Those are all pictures of Doc Holliday, sort of. We don't really know if the top 3 photos actually are him. They may very well be at different times in his life, but nobody knows for certain. And also other people have played him. So he's kind of a mythological character, much more than he is a historical character, you know, like Wyatt Earp or something. But the comic has a lot of influences, Spain Rodriguez, Jack Jackson's underground Western comics, and things like Dope Rider by Paul Kirchner that appeared in High Times magazine, all weird Western material. But no matter how weird it is, it's still essentially a Western, and that's the best way to start a Western, which is a lone rider of a horse in the dark, leaking blood out of a gunshot arm. But it's also about weird stuff. So there's also a time-traveling science wizard, Nikola Tesla, and bizarre witches from another dimension and crow demigods. That is to say, it's not just a weird Western meaning just weird. It has occult, horror, and psychedelic and acid sort of influences, like from these movies like El Topo and Wild Wild West, and certainly spaghetti westerns, and like Zachariah, the first electric western that Country Joe and the Fish did in the 1970s. So the cinematic influences come out in pages like this. The long horizontal is sort of just the quintessential Western visual trope. There is no Western really that's as effective as cut through that window, I think. And also like this. With great dialogue written by my co-creator and writer, Bill Woodcock, who is a crazy person out on the West Coast. And we both have an equal obsession with the character. So this is one process. I do 11 by 17 sized piece of art, which is the scale of a comic. Sometimes I do individual drawings like the one at the top. I source textures, I make textures, I take photos, I find photos. And it comes together like this, with digital painting and digital special effects stuff, all in Photoshop. So everything is a additive and subtractive process, more like painting, and certainly like collages, except for you don't have to worry about things being glued permanently in collage, right? You can digitally go back and forth till it's right. Again, drawing based on photographic reference, 1800s homestead, and then finally collaging it together. The stove was not from there. It was a different museum photo of an old stove, and then finally the final image, and that's the final page. I don't do a lot of backgrounds, unlike my Mr. Fry, who is the architect in the room and is extremely, I'm sure, well versed in drawing buildings and everything else. So I have to play to my strengths. So I struggle very hard through at least one panel that has structure to it, and then the rest of it is all for mood. But it works out okay, I think, when you're dealing with a mythological, highly charged story. Again, This is all for one splash page, one big horizontal page. Drawings, collected elements. That's brocade from the 1800s. It's a tin ceiling tile. And then it comes together like this. A lot of people would draw everything, but I like the fact that there's items out there in museums and other, collective photography of these things, or I could take pictures of myself, and why not just collage the thing together? Because to me, the myths of a character that's as elusive but at the same time so completely charged in American culture and worldwide, I think at this point, it doesn't pay to draw every little thing. What it pays off, I think, and what has paid off with the people that like the book is that it just comes together. You turn a page and it just comes together. And it's because of the pieces of different images drawn, sourced, the wild color. Because that's what myth is. Myth is memory, and myth is sort of this... it's the one person who says, this thing happened, and another person says, oh no, he was actually 10 feet tall, and another person says, oh, he had fireballs coming out of his ears. That's what really makes these stories work, so it's okay to have that in the visuals. And color can really work a lot for scenes too, like in a piece of action like this. Now this is where the rubber hits the road with pure Western. You got to have gunfights, you got to have knife fights. And this is a place where there's no backgrounds, and the reason why is because in our imagination, if you were in a gunfight, you wouldn't have the time to know about anything other than those elements that were happening directly to you. And of course, then the mythology comes together, the iconography comes together, and the book sort of hopefully elevates the character from just being a gunfighter and a few old, dusty photos into something much more than that. He becomes a superhero, he becomes a demigod, he becomes, a mythologically charged warrior. And that's what we're trying to do with this book that's in process. Thanks.